Hi, guys. Welcome back to Chronicles of a Therapist. I am sitting with Tiffany, my sister friend, and we are just kind of chopping it up like we was. We were definitely about to dive into therapy, and we were talking about like just the struggles of like parenting, and actually we were talking about your ability to verbalize and talk about how you feel. And so, how did that struggle? How did that affect your daughter? Like, how did your inability to verbalize in relationships, how did that play out with your daughter? And what did you see come of that?
Believe it or not, she was one of the people that I had no problem being verbal with, but that's because the roles were reversed. So, for example, I'm parenting her, I'm teaching her
Right.
ways that I'm now learning so that she can be better than who I was at her age and who I am. So it was a bit different, the effects of my inability
Right.
on her.
Right. How did I don't want to
If
put it.
anything, I over communicated with her.
Do you think that was a good or bad thing?
I think it was a combination of both. I think she was given some valid information that, she could utilize to grow, but I think she was also overly informed
Yeah.
and she had information that she could misuse.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. When I'm trying to phrase stuff without putting my niece's business out there. Well, I'll say this. I remember I think it was, and I don't know if something happened before I came around, but I remember when she was younger, she got it was an ice. They was fighting. They was throwing ice, and I
Oh,
remember to me that was like super influential to her, like that. And so what ended up happening? Somebody threw an ice ball at her or
they
something, and
did.
she had
She
like
developed scoliosis and
yeah,
was bruised pretty badly.
and it was like
She had a hematoma as well.
and it became a whole physical therapy, and I think
2 years.
yeah, that was crazy. She was
It
like
was. She was 7.
yeah, I remember that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was outside of all of your own personal stuff. I just remember that time and just, and I will say, kudos to you as a parent for just being there and being present because a lot of times things
Thank you.
happen to children and their parents. You be all right.
All right.
We go, go ahead. You just lay down.
Take a nap, get
Just
some
drink some
ginger ale.
ginger ale.
Yeah, no,
Go
I
ahead, drink
appreciate
some
that.
water. Lay down.
I did what I was supposed to do. That's
Yeah,
all.
but a lot of in our communities, they don't do that. We don't do that. It's like you'll be fine. I'm wrong with you. People,
Mm.
and so. But I say that to say I saw her change. I feel like there was a big change in who she was because she was missing school. She's super smart, and so just seeing her change. Do you think that that was the big moment for her that changed?
No,
No.
no, I think it might have affected her socially, but academically, she still thrived. Emotionally, if you're talking about that type of change, I
Hmm.
think the fact that she had an absent parent is something that changed her in a sense.
Yeah, I think. When did she realized how, or when did you realize how detrimental, and what was your
I always
plan?
knew. I always knew the absence of her father would be detrimental because I was a child that
For
grew
sure.
up without a father for the duration of at least until 18. So I had always known. I had her in active therapy because of my back knowledge of how important that other role was.
Yeah. So that's the thing that made you. Was it behaviors that made you start, or was it
No,
just preventative? Like, I
absolutely,
want to make sure you are.
for sure,
I didn't even realize that that was the thing that made you want to put her in therapy. I just
absolutely.
remember her being in therapy so
Yeah,
long.
yeah, yeah.
How did you think she took on that part of being in therapy, being a kid, being in therapy, having a mom who might have only talked to you? Like, how did growing up? Because what y'all don't know is she's super smart. She's like one of the smartest kids I know. Well, she's an adult now, but whatever. She's still a baby to us. But even in her smartness, how does she finagle or work through feelings and like all the stuff? You over talked to her, you over smothered her. Like, how did she kind of grow or bud
It's
as a
difficult for me to answer that because she is overly intelligent. She
for
skipped the
sure?
second grade. She's always been around peers that have been a year or two older than she is. So she's had the ability to navigate different
For
situations
sure.
and conversations. I believe therapy was beneficial for her, but only she could answer that question
For
for
sure.
her.
I mean, do you think that you saw even her being continuously in therapy?
Hmm.
Did you see progress? Do you think that it helped her be able to talk about her feelings and
She's always been very communicative, yes.
okay,
Um, but again, I think that's a testament to
you,
I do.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Which is different because like we ended our last episode just talking about you just being able to interpersonally learn how to communicate your feelings. So
Yeah.
you were able to teach your daughter this skill
That I didn't have.
that you didn't have till last year.
Absolutely.
And so we
But see,
ended
that's the thing about being a parent though.
right,
You are solely responsible for their experience here, and you want it to be maximized.
right,
So whether you know how to do something for yourself or not, you figure out how to do it for them or how to instill it in them.
right.
As a good parent, that's just what you do.
And I think too, I think one thing about you, you've always asked for help when you needed it. And I
No,
think
I
a lot of
haven't.
no,
No, I never ask for help.
you ask help for me all the time, so maybe I don't have
It's
that.
relational. It's relational. Like if I trust you, if if I feel that
That's true.
level of comfortability, then absolutely, like this is what I need, and I'll even demand it. But
That's such a brat.
but genuinely and normally, no, I don't ask anyone for anything.
Okay.
That's why I used to have 3 jobs so that I wouldn't have
Y'all think I'm bad.
to.
We probably neck and neck about that, having multiple jobs. We shared how long was it? Was it 2 years we didn't talk? Was it two?
3
Was it three?
3
Okay,
years.
so we when we talk about like family relationships and communication and just your growth of being able to communicate to people close to you. Me and her have always been close. We just the first time we met, it was like we've known each other forever. Like that's why we immediately like, oh, okay, sis. Like it was crazy. But we had a moment 3 years ago where we did stop. We literally stopped talking for 3 years. And what I am grateful for is even in that 3 year gap, we both had our time to do our work and grow and develop and do our own personal work, but we were able to still kind of bounce back better. So talk about maybe how necessary your reset was. We'll call it that because it was
No, it isn't. I wouldn't call it a
okay.
reset.
Well, what would we call it?
I would call it a shedding. Like God literally took me through a time of shedding me of people, things, and places.
Hmm.
Um, that's what I would label it if I labeled it anything.
Hmm. And you said like so last year. That was the year where you learned how to communicate. What was the things or the thing that made you learn how to communicate interpersonally?
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So I would internalize the my experiences of people, especially if they were negative or hurtful. Um, so the pain of it all, the the realization that me internalizing how I felt led to depressive episodes kept me from ever wanting to go down that road again. So I will overly express for the rest of my life.
That's amazing. I think that a lot of people don't realize how our own emotional pain, our own whether it's not unprocessed trauma, whatever it is, like how that affects us interpersonally. And so just you being able to identify that, like, child, listen, I got so many clients I wish learned that. Cute. But I think that just understanding, like, I do believe that pain, all pain, regardless of where, when, or what, has a purpose, right? Because, I mean, even in our body, if I stub my toe and I never know that I stubbed my toe could full blown gangrene and my whole leg is getting cut off, right? And so I always tell people that pain is important on some levels because it allows us to know what is going on with us. And it sounds like through your journey like you've learned different ways to identify,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
okay, I got mental health. I'm struggling with this, but it's important to be able to work through and know what I need to do for me and how does that look.
Absolutely.
So I want you to talk about how, if you want, like how did you push past your pain, traumas, we can even talk about relationship stuff because I think that's a good segue. Just talking about how our intimate relationships have affected us in our mental health, in our emotional, interpersonal relationships.
So to address the first part of your question,
I know it's
the
loaded.
the
Sorry.
the push through, I was successful because of my spiritual growth and relationship and just my overall desire to live and to do so abundantly. But my family, like my support, my parents, the people that are a part of my support system, they were absolutely amazing during that time of immense pain last year.
Right, for sure. For sure.
What was the second question? Intimate relationships.
Yeah. How has your pain and your struggles, how have they affected your mental health affected your relationships? That's basically
I'm not
it.
always emotionally available, and I'm very dismissive. So that's those two things have greatly affected my intimate life.
Yeah. How do we think? I think it's important to be honest about like when we because we talk all the time about marriage and wanting to be married and stuff like that, right? So how do you see what you need to do different so that we don't keep doing these same things? I said we because I have those tendencies as well too.
What's the actual question?
What do you think you need to do different? How can you push past your dismissiveness in your intimate relationships? I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I understand in dating, of course we know everybody ain't right. We know that. It's a weeding process. We
For
know
sure.
that. But how do you push past that? And it really is a trauma response, right? It's easier to push people away than not. Like if I push you away and I see it's bullshit,
I don't know. So in dating, I really don't see anything wrong with my ability to quickly disconnect.
okay,
Now, should I be in a committed relationship? If I'm committed and I'm tapped in, I'm not going to dismiss him or the situation. I'll fight if it's something worth fighting for,
right.
but I just have to get to that point.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part of just us in the dating realm and experiencing life and all the things that you've experienced. Like to that's kind of where we're at now. And so I did want to talk about. We were talking. I think it was last week or whatever. But we were just talking about marriage and like we have a lot of people that we're connected to, whether they're friends, whether they're family. And we were just talking about marriage and what she asked me a really good question last week about what does marriage look like to you.
Hmm.
And I wanted to talk about that because I feel like at this age, and a lot of people who, I mean, you see, there's all these podcasts that's come out about how to be a good wife, how to be whatever. And I don't think there's a lot of space to talk about the uniqueness of every personal marriage.
For sure. It's subjective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, even in our own conversations and dating and the things that we experience, we see that people want something that they're not really ready for. So
Absolutely.
you want to be married, but you haven't done any of the work, your own personal work, your trauma work, your I can't communicate, I get upset, like all of those things. And so I think it's important in this platform in this space to just talk about what how do we get there. Now, granted, we're not married, so we have not got there yet. But
True.
I guess we both can kind of talk about like I'll talk for me. I'm not vulnerable. That's my biggest struggle that I definitely have been working through over the past couple of years, being able to be emotionally available and vulnerable. And for me, my lack of vulnerability has come from my career and what I do. And a lot of people dump on me. A lot of people pour and dump. And so I've to protect myself, I'm not vulnerable because I don't need to. And so when you
That's
think of
terrible. You do need to.
uh, sometimes, why do I need
You
to? Why do you think I
you
need to be vulnerable?
you have to offer what you're requiring. You want him to be vulnerable for you and you're not willing to get out of here.
That's why I'm working on it. I'm talking about in the past. I'm working on it. But it wasn't until I really was able to realize, like, dang, you are not, I am not vulnerable. So I think even in that, like, I'm seeing how that has played out in my own personal dating and stuff like
Gotcha.
that. So when I say how have I been working on getting closer to marriage, that was the real question. What are you doing to work through? Yes, you. I'm not saying you got to entertain everybody because
Right.
obviously you got to weed people out.
Mhm.
But you, my friend, how do you navigate through that? Like,
Um, I mean, it's difficult to be honest with you. I think for me, I have to get to the place first. You have to bring me to that level of commitment before we even talk about vulnerability.
for
Like
sure.
I'm not being too overly vulnerable if I'm just dating or if we're just getting to know one another.
Do you think that presents issues for us in the
I
dating
I
realm?
don't. I don't. You can
Like,
you can show intentions without releasing certain parts of who you are.
well, how do we get to? I'm just thinking out of my own, like, as somebody who doesn't like to be vulnerable, that's just not easy.
What are you afraid of?
I don't think I just don't want to probably be mishandled. I know that's what it is.
That's fear.
Yeah. And so on some levels with the vulnerability part, when you're dating someone in this day and age, it's hard to see
But
intentions
you can be
play out.
mishandled in marriage. You can
Let's talk
commit
about it.
and be mishandled.
That's true.
So then what?
That's true.
I date fearlessly, I will say that. I just leave quickly as well. Like I don't know. I have a low tolerance for certain things.
Right.
And I think maybe you should just sit yourself down and say, okay, this and this would help me release some of this fear,
For
or
sure.
this is something that I need or require in order for me to give you certain parts of who I am as a woman. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Right. I still don't like it.
You said what?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
It's a part of it.
Yeah, but I wish I had married people in here.
Why?
No, because I want to talk about being mishandled in marriage. And
Okay.
I ain't married, so I can't talk about it because I
Okay.
think a lot of people that's real and a lot of people in marriages, especially growing up in the church and stuff like that, there's parts of marriages and relationships that are taboo that people don't talk about.
So you think that you can't speak on it because you've never done it?
I'm not married, but I could talk about it, of course, but I would like that point of view to talk about
The
the
realities of it?
reality
Okay.
of, because I feel like in our society, like, even if you look at Instagram or whatever, marriage looks a certain way, but nobody is talking about the other parts of marriage. Nobody's talking about that day to day. Nobody, and I think for us, we see within, even in our family, we see parts of marriage that people don't talk about. Like, oh, it looks
Mhm.
good. Look, oh, look, they've been anniversary. Woo. But there's no conversations about the ins and outs. And so people, I feel like, are wanting to be married. And then what? And we talk about that too. Like the people who we know who are married or newlyweds or whatever. Okay, you're married, but how have you prepared for this? Because now there's two people and all of their stuff trying to come together and be one. And so I think that's an experience that we don't know. Of course, I've counseled them. I have family members,
Yeah.
but
I think the basis of it matters as well. So you do have, like you said, people who want to be married for the look of it,
for
but then
sure,
you have people who are kingdom people who are coming together to do God's work. So I think those perspectives would be different as well.
yeah. And I think that's so. It's funny because when you asked me, it did make me think. Well, what do you see for marriage? And one of the things was partnership and growth. And it's not
Right.
just the, we want to look good. I want to take vacations, and I want to. That's
Right.
like an after product. But I think both of us want that. Like, I want a man to be the head, and I want to be able to follow your leadership.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to be like, let's do this business. And I think a lot of times a lot of people who are single are either getting married because they're kind of stuck or they had a kid, or their mentality aren't aligned. And so I think that's another part of, I guess I would say, for me being vulnerable. I'm not about to just have a kid with you. I'm 37. I haven't had a child. I'm not about to have a kid with you just to keep you. So I think,
Yeah, children don't keep men.
I know it
Okay.
doesn't, but I know people think like that.
Or women.
True. All right, guys. Thank you for listening and enjoying our conversation. We'll catch you next time. You can follow me at CNChef_Chronicles. And don't forget to allow your passion to prepare your purpose. Catch you guys next time.